Good morning and welcome to Halifax Pride, our morning meditation series. My name is Patrick, he, him pronouns. I'm on the board of Halifax Pride. I'm also one of the co-leads for the Health and Wellness Committee. We are very excited to have this morning meditation series as well as all of our other health and wellness initiatives. Thank you for joining us this morning. Very much grateful. Looking forward to meditating with Kirk Furlot, who is currently behind me on the other screen. But before I introduce Kirk officially, I would like to acknowledge that this gathering and the Halifax Pride Festival take place in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship with Wabanaki peoples. We are all treaty peoples. Also, Halifax Pride is dedicated to providing space that is accessible, inclusive, and free from oppression, harassment, and discrimination. In this space, we will treat each other with respect and dignity, regardless of age, race, gender expression, gender identity, sexual orientation, levels of ability, and all our other diverse identities. And Halifax Pride stands in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement to end police brutality and violence against Black communities across North America. African Nova Scotians and Black people have the right to live free from oppression, violence, and systemic marginalization. Thank you. So thanks for joining us this morning. We're very excited to have Kirk Furlot. Just to note that Kirk will be able to finish this meditation himself, and I shall just say goodbye now and remind you all to check all of the awesome Halifax Pride initiatives that are going on throughout the week. Thanks for joining us, and over to you, Kirk.
Thank you, Patrick. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kirk Furlot. My pronouns are he, him, and his. Before I dive in, I just want to tell you a little bit about how I got here today. So I was very curious about Buddhism from a young age, but I kept putting it off until I finally started sitting with a group here in Halifax like 12 years ago. And I'm even on my path to become a Buddhist priest, which happy to talk more about that some other time. As with the land acknowledgement, I want to recognize the tradition and transmission of knowledge from Buddhism. So Buddhism originated in India, and it is spread across the world. The particular path that I follow traveled from India to China, to Japan, to the United States, and then to Canada. There are, of course, many schools of Buddhism. Mine is Japanese Soto Zen, that's S-O-T-O. Which isn't the only form of Zen, but I'm going to simply say Zen for simplicity. All right. For sitting meditation, we use the term Zazen, and that is Z-A-Z-E-N. But again, I'm just going to say meditation. So the point of Zen meditation is basically to connect with everything around and in you and recognize that it's all connected. We aren't blocking out everything. You're aware of it, but you're focusing your energies on being still. The image of that stone-faced monk who's impervious to all that's happening around him, no, he knows what's going on. He's just choosing to focus on remaining still and meditating. Because of this, it's usually very quiet. I've sat with groups where not a noise was made for over an hour. I'll talk a lot during this session, mostly at the beginning, but then I will try and be silent to allow us all to practice. So let's get started. The guidance I'm going to provide is how I learned and how my teachers learned and how their teachers learned, and so on. Traditionally, we face the wall, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But since I need to talk to you, I will face the screen. You want to sit however you are comfortable. I'm sitting on what's known as a zafu, that's Z-A-F-U. It's a round cushion. And that is on a zabuton, which is Z-A-B-U-T-O-N, and that's a square mat. This is to help you sit in a way that's comfortable, but that also elevates my hips, and we'll get to that in a moment. You can sit on a chair, or however you are comfortable. If you are sitting on a chair, you might want to sit right up at the front, like right on the edge, because if you lean on the back, obviously if you need to, that's fine. But if you'll find yourself leaning back to rest on the chair, and we're going to talk about your spinal placement in a moment. I sit quarter or half lotus. So full lotus is when you are able to take both your legs and cross them over so that one foot is resting on the thigh, the other, and so is the other foot. That is a challenge which I have met, but it is hard, and I really can't do it for very long. Quarter lotus is when you sit with one foot on the calf of the other leg, your legs are crossed. Half lotus is your foot on the one foot on the thigh. I'm going to sit quarter lotus today just because it is hot and I am wearing a big heavy robe. And it also just depends on how flexible I'm feeling that day. You do want to tilt your hips slightly forward, and that's why I sit on a cushion. And that's why you'll want to sit on the edge of the chair, because then you can just sort of like tilt your hips just a little bit forward. Your back should be mostly straight. We actually often use a board or a piece of wood to ensure your back is properly aligned. However, for us, it's going to feel like you're leaning backwards slightly. We tend to lean forward a lot, especially with all of our screen time. When you're on the computer, you lean forward and use the keyboard. On your phone, you crouch forward. So it should feel like you're leaning back. Not to the point where you're going to fall, although that does happen. Your hands are going to rest in your lap, one palm on top of the other, and your thumbs should meet but not touch. If there was a piece of paper, it could theoretically slide between your two thumbs. This is because I say this because people will often do this thing where they press their thumbs together, trying to like get it out. But this is supposed to be a relaxed state. For children, I often say it this way. If you flip your hands upside down, you'll see the Superman shield. Okay, so your hands in your palm. Your shoulders should be relaxed, which, that's a challenge for me. So you may want to roll them a few times to get comfortable. Again, it should feel like they're slightly pushed back because, again, we tend to hunch. Your head should be at the top of your spine, which I know sounds obvious, but think of a string that is attached through your spine all the way down to your hips. That string is connected to the top back of your head. And I say top back or crown, not the middle, but just like at the top of your spine. And then imagine someone pulling that string up, and that will straighten your spine. And you may also look downwards slightly. One of the best descriptions I've heard is that you should be looking at the space on the floor where you would face plant if you fell asleep, which I have done. Let's talk about your mouth, which might not be something you think of in meditation, but you want to place your tongue gently at the back of your top front teeth. It's really hard to describe some of these things after years of doing it. Just like the advice they give you for smiling, it helps relax your jaw because you might tend to clench. And then your eyes. We do not close our eyes. And I will say, obviously, for those of us using ASL interpretation, keep your eyes open. You need to see what's being said. But we do narrow our field of vision. This is to remove as many visual distractions as possible. And again, that's why we typically face the wall, because it's a plain blank setting. So you want to relax your eyelids and stare at the ground in front of you. For the most part, I'm going to be looking at the screen just so that it feels very unnatural to talk to the screen and not look at you. Your vision may glaze over from time to time, So it might get a little bit blurry, a little bit foggy. That's perfectly normal. That's just your body relaxing. And quite frankly, your body getting a bit antsy that you're not doing anything. Our body's constantly in motion. Uh, so that's the basics of setting our body to the task. Next up is our breath, our breathing. Breathing is one of the most natural acts that you will perform. Yet we often don't breathe quite as naturally as we might like. I have anxiety, so I know my breathing is often distressed and too fast. So this is good for me to help me calm down a little bit. There are different forms of intentional breathing depending on your goals. For example, actors and singers are often told to breathe from their diaphragm. We're going to do the opposite. We want big, deep belly breaths. Not comically exaggerated, but we want to feel our belly expanding, pulling in the air, and then pushing it out. We want to fill ourselves with air and life. Since our mouths are closed, this is done entirely through your nose. You should be aware of the flow of air between your nostrils so you should feel it come and go. Your breathing should be slow and steady. This helps you relax your body and your brain. Speaking of your brain, that's what most people really care about is, what's going on there. So for this session, we're going to focus on our surroundings. Focus on what you're feeling. One meditation tactic that I like to use at the beginning is to think of yourself as a rock in a stream. Your thoughts are going to be leaves resting upon the water, floating down the stream. As the rock, you'll see the leaves. They'll pass. Some will pass by you. Some will bump up into you. Some will bump into you and stay. And then possibly more leaves will collect and gather. That's okay. Your brain is working. That's good. Your goal, though, is to see the leaves, recognize that they're there, and then imagine them moving on. You want to see the thoughts flowing past you. And if you realize somewhere during this that you're like, oh, I have been staring at these leaves for 20 minutes, that's okay. And you might also want to focus on your breathing. That's what I often do. So I will start at 1 with a deep inhalation. And then a 2 for the exhalation. And yes, I realized I used my mouth there. So you want to go from 1 to 10. An inhalation, 1. An exhalation, 2. And so on until you hit 10. And then you start all over again. This is to help train your brain and give yourself the time to focus. Because if you're focused on one thing, you may not notice all those leaves streaming by. So you're going to realize that you've lost track of your numbers, and that's okay. You start over. You failed, that's fine. Then you're going to start again. And then you're going to realize you are at 15. That's okay too. Start again. You're going to realize that you don't know what number you're at. That's okay. Start again. There's nothing wrong with starting over. Now, traditionally, we use a lot of bells in these things. And so I'm going to use a sound to start us off, if it ever goes. And I'm going to be mostly silent during this time, but I will offer what wisdom, advice, and guidance I have, little tips and tricks that I haven't said yet that will hopefully help you. One thing I want to say is that you will notice when you sit still how many itches you have, that bead of sweat rolling down your cheek. That's okay. You can either choose to accept that sensation, oh, there's the bell, or scratch it. It's fine. This is your first time doing this particular form of meditation, possibly. Or maybe it's your 1001st time. The point is that you're aware of it. You become aware of all these aches and pains in your body, or itches or sensations. And that is part of the experience. So now that the bell's gone, while I was talking, I'm going to be quiet for just a few minutes while you sit in silence. One thing I have learned is that I have no sense of time when I'm sitting. It feels like an eternity sometimes. It's only been 2 minutes so far. Check in with yourself. How are you doing? Have you started hunching forward? I have. Have you noticed any pain or discomfort in your body? Do you need to readjust yourself? That's okay. Do you need to stretch beforehand sometimes? I usually do yoga before I sit. And is it pain or discomfort or just a sensation? I don't want you to suffer in pain, but if it's just discomfort or just a sensation, maybe just sit in that, see how it feels. Where are your thoughts? Are you thinking about everything you have to do today? Are you thinking about the things you should have done? One of my greatest challenges with sitting is that eventually my mind will go to every regret and anxiety I've ever had in my life. That's okay. You see them, you see the leaves, you see them brush up against your rock, and you see them, the water carry them away. If you have a eureka moment of remembering something you should do, or an idea for a passion project or work or something you want to do during Pride, that's okay too. I often have those moments to the point where sometimes I will have my phone or a piece of paper next to me and I will make notes and then I'll go back to sitting. There's often this perception that you have to do it perfectly or don't do it at all. That is not the way. You have to try, and that's what matters most. There's a Zen phrase, I never remember it properly, but essentially it boils down to fall down 7 times, stand up 8. You just keep trying. I have had sessions where I've sat and stared at a wall for 30 minutes and done nothing but think about schoolwork or my life or my personal things. But I come back and I try again. And sometimes I've reached that point where I'm like, I just can't focus. That's fine. I will get up, I will stretch, I'll go get a glass of water, and then I'll come back down, sit down, stare at that wall, and try again. So how was that for you? I hope it was okay. It was just an introduction session, obviously. It's a bit weird just sitting here doing this at a screen when I'm used to either doing it alone or in a group of people. But thank you for joining us here today. There are several more sessions, daytime, morning, and nighttime sessions. Please do consider attending them. Oh, I don't know what's going on there. I will say one of the most important parts to me for meditation is not, I mean, yes, obviously the meditation, but afterwards you might want to do a little stretching. I tend to twist because my back gets sore. Your legs get sore. You might want to, I often, because I sit quarter lotus most of the time, I tend to need to rub one foot. Squeeze your toes. Don't stand up right away, a lesson I've made more than once. And that's, I think, a key element that I hope I've refrained is you'll make mistakes, you'll try again, and that's what matters most. That is it for me today. I hope you have a great day. I hope you find some stillness and mindfulness with you. Yeah, so yes, enjoy the rest of your Pride, and I'll see you soon.